You sit down at a polished wooden table. You stare at a menu filled with predictable choices. Your food arrives perfectly prepared on a bright white plate. The meat is separated from the bone. But for about 300,000 years, this was not your reality. For 99% of human history, your ancestors did not order their meals. They tracked them down, scraped them off rocks, and dug them out of the dirt. Today, the average human relies on just 15 plants and 8 animals for 90% of their calories. How did your diet become so unimaginably boring? Your prehistoric body was a magnificent survival engine. It craved calories constantly to feed the massive, energy-hungry brain inside your skull. Your ancient body had to get extremely creative. You did not just hunt majestic deer. What else were you forced to swallow? Consider the marrow inside a rotting bone. 2 million years ago, your early ancestors were not the apex predators of the African savanna. You were the scavengers. You waited in the tall grass while massive lions finished eating their prey. You watched while the hyenas stripped the remaining flesh. What was left for you? The bones. But your ancestors had something the hyenas did not have. You had heavy rocks. Anthropologists digging at Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania have found thousands of animal bones completely smashed to pieces. These ancient people were using stone tools to crack open the femurs and skulls of dead animals. They were after the fat-rich bone marrow and the brain tissue. Human brains are entirely built from specific fats. To grow a bigger brain, you needed to consume massive amounts of dense animal fat. You were essentially eating other brains to build your own. This scavenging lifestyle meant you were often eating meat that had been sitting in the hot sun. Your stomach acid had to be incredibly strong to handle the dangerous bacteria. In fact, human stomach acid is far more acidic than that of most other primates. It is chemically closer to the stomach acid of a vulture. Your ancestors evolved to safely eat rotting meat. How many times did your ancestors cheat death just by having a highly acidic stomach? But scavenging was highly unpredictable. You needed reliable food. You needed insects. Modern humans often view insects as pests or signs of decay. But for your ancestors, they were a primary source of life. In the 1960s, an anthropologist named Richard Lee spent years living with the San people in the Kalahari Desert. He observed exactly how hunter-gatherer societies actually survive day to day. They do not rely on big game hunting every single day. Big game hunting is intensely dangerous and often fails. Instead, they gather a vast array of small, hidden calories, and insects are the absolute perfect food to gather. They are packed with protein, fat, and essential minerals. Your ancestors ate locusts, termites, and fat grubs dug from the roots of dying trees. They roasted them over fires or mashed them into highly nutritious pastes. Did you know that a serving of wild caterpillars has more protein than a serving of modern beef? Your ancient teeth tell an even stranger story. When you do not brush your teeth, plaque builds up and hardens into a substance called dental calculus. This hardened tartar traps microscopic particles of everything you put in your mouth. For modern archaeologists, ancient dental calculus is like a biological time capsule. A researcher named Karen Hardy led a groundbreaking study analyzing the teeth of Neanderthals found in El Sidron Cave in northern Spain. What she found completely changed our understanding of the prehistoric diet. These Neanderthals were not just eating mammoth meat. They were eating damp moss. They were chewing on bitter tree bark. They were consuming medicinal plants like yarrow and chamomile. One Neanderthal had a painful dental abscess and an agonizing stomach parasite. His teeth showed that he had been eating a specific fungus that naturally produces penicillin. He was also chewing on tree bark containing the exact active ingredient found in modern aspirin. Your ancestors were not just eating strange things for basic calories. Were they actually using the wild landscape as a massive, complex pharmacy? If you lived in colder climates, your weird food choices expanded even further. Imagine you're standing on the edge of a freezing, shallow lake in ancient Michigan. You and your hunting party have just brought down a massive mastodon. It weighs thousands of pounds. You cannot possibly eat all of this meat before it goes bad. You do not have salt or smokehouses. What do? You drag the heavy sections of raw meat into the freezing water of a peat bog and weigh them down with stones. Paleontologist Daniel Fisher discovered exactly this phenomenon. He found ancient meat caches at the bottom of prehistoric ponds. The cold, low-oxygen environment of the bog prevented normal rotting. Instead, bacteria called lactobacillus colonized the meat. It fermented the flesh, preserving it and giving it a sour, highly pungent flavor. Months later, in the dead of winter when you were starving, you would break the ice and pull up chunks of sour, fermented mastodon meat. You ate it completely raw. It was the ancient equivalent of extreme-aged cheese. How completely desperate must you be to eat sour meat from the bottom of a freezing swamp? The scientific explanation for this extreme diet involves your own internal anatomy. In the 1990s, scientists Leslie Aiello and Peter Wheeler proposed the expensive tissue hypothesis. It explains a massive biological trade-off inside your body. Digestion takes an enormous amount of physical energy. To grow your massive, calorie-hungry brain, your body had to shrink your digestive tract. You traded a massive gut for a massive brain. But a shorter gut means you can no longer properly digest huge amounts of raw, tough plant fiber like a gorilla does. You needed high-quality, easily absorbed food. You needed meat, fat, and insects. So let us try to recreate a day in the life of your ancient digestive system. You wake up when your body is ready. No alarms, no strict schedules. The morning sun hits your face as you step out of your rock shelter. You are hungry, but there is no pantry to open. You immediately begin scanning the damp ground. You spot a rotting log and peel back the bark. You find a handful of fat, white beetle grubs. You pop them into your mouth alive. They burst with a fatty, nutty flavor. It is a quick and efficient breakfast. As you walk toward a fresh water source, you chew on a piece of pine bark to stave off the hunger pangs. The bark is tough and fibrous, but it provides a steady drip of carbohydrates. By midday, your hunting party finds the remains of a small deer killed by a leopard the night before. The meat is entirely gone, but the long leg bones remain. You use a heavy, the round cobblestone to smash the bones against a flat rock. You suck out the rich, raw marrow. It is incredibly thick and tastes heavily of iron. In the late afternoon, you find a massive patch of wild tubers. They look like pale potatoes, but they are incredibly tough, stringy, and filled with mild natural toxins. You dig them up with a sharpened stick. You bring them back to your camp and bury them under the hot ashes of your fire. The intense heat neutralizes the poison and softens the fibers. You eat them covered in dirt and gray ash. This is your dinner. Your jaw aches deeply from chewing. Your stomach is full of roughage, raw fat, and insects, but you are completely alive. This incredibly diverse, bizarre diet made your ancestors extremely resilient. You were a biological generalist. If the giant mammals died out, you simply ate snails. Excavations at the Classes River mouth caves in South Africa show that early humans ate massive quantities of giant land snails and roasted tortoise. Anthropologist James Sussman points out that this extreme dietary diversity was your ultimate insurance policy. If the climate shifted, you simply shifted your menu. You were highly adaptable. But then, roughly 12,000 years ago, everything changed. You fell into a massive biological trap. The agricultural revolution began. Your ancestors figured out how to domesticate wild grasses like wheat, barley, and rice. You stopped wandering. You built permanent villages and started farming. At first, this seems like a massive leap forward. You no longer had to eat moss or scavenge rotting bone marrow. You had endless fields of grain. But this physical comfort came at a devastating biological cost. When you shifted to farming, you traded your vast, weird, wild diet for a tiny handful of domesticated crops. You started eating basic gruel and flat bread every single day. This monotonous diet severely lacked the broad spectrum of vitamins and minerals your body had evolved to expect. The skeletal evidence from early farming communities is actually shocking. When anthropologists examine the bones of early farmers, they find severe signs of extreme malnutrition. They find stunted bone growth. They find widespread, severe anemia. For the first time in human history, human teeth became completely riddled with cavities because of the high carbohydrate diet of grains. Your jaw actually shrank because you were no longer chewing tough bark and raw meat. This is exactly why your wisdom teeth no longer fit perfectly in your mouth today. Even your overall brain size decreased slightly. The agricultural revolution gave you predictable calories, but it robbed you of your evolutionary vitality. By choosing the safe and easy food, your body became significantly weaker. Your modern biology is still deeply confused by the world you live in today. You walk into a brightly lit supermarket filled with 50,000 different packaged items, but biologically, almost everything in those bright aisles is derived from the exact same three basic ingredients: corn, wheat, and soy. Your body is silently starved for the bizarre diversity of the wild. It is exactly why you still crave strange, intense flavors. When you eat heavily fermented foods like spicy kimchi or aged blue cheese, you are echoing the survival tactics of ancestors who ate rotting meat from frozen ponds. When you absolutely crave the charred, crispy edges of a barbecued steak, you are satisfying a 2 million-year-old instinct born around a savanna campfire. Your deep cravings for crunchy textures, sour tangs, and heavy animal fats are the invisible ghosts of your evolutionary past. They are biological reminders that you were not built to eat sterile, perfectly processed blocks of gentle nutrition. You were built to consume the natural world in all its dirty, raw, and chaotic glory. You sit down at a polished wooden table. You stare at a menu filled with predictable choices. Your food arrives perfectly prepared on a bright white plate. The meat is separated from the bone. But now, your body was built for a much wilder feast. Leave a comment below detailing which of these ancient foods you would be brave enough to physically try. Hit the subscribe button to keep exploring the brutal, beautiful, and completely strange reality of your ancient past. Keep surviving and prepare your mind for the next journey.